Welcome to Uncharted. This is episode 10 and it's the value episode. I'm talking value, ego, covert contracts, the unspoken deals that define us. And as always, I'll look at how this affects you financially, mentally, and emotionally.
I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto 5-4 amber eyes. I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto 5-4 amber eyes. I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto 5-4 amber eyes. I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto 5-4 amber eyes. I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto 5-4 amber eyes. Uncharted. Let's go.
Welcome to Uncharted, the podcast that rips a map right out of your hands and forces you to think differently about money, crypto, psychology, and success. I'm Lisa Ann Edwards, a crypto trader, investor, and entrepreneur with over 25 years in traditional markets. With 5 multi-million-dollar businesses under my belt, I've navigated bull runs, crashes, scams, pumps, and dumps, and I'm here to give you the brutal truth about wealth in a world that never stops changing. But that's not all. Before crypto, I lived in a world where money isn't real, Hollywood. Well, the Australian version. And as a former talent agent and now writer and film producer, I've seen firsthand how power, influence, and manipulation shape the way we think about success. The game is rigged, but only if you play by their rules. In this show, we go deep in the psychology of money, expose how the system really works, and give you the tools to build your own wealth. And because life isn't just about numbers, we'll take a few detours into travel, luxury, and hacking the system to live on your terms. So if you're ready to break free from financial lies, trading myths, and the mindset traps keeping you broke, you're in the right place. This is Uncharted. Let's get started.
I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto 5-4 amber eyes. Uncharted. Let's go.
Welcome back to Uncharted. This is episode 10. I can't believe we're here. So in this episode, it started as a broad conversation about value, but we're going to look at what we chase, what we hold on to, what we fight for. But today it's kind of personal because I've been in the middle of a value conflict, not with money or time, but with people. People I've worked with, trusted and loved. People who on paper contributed to great work, but whose perceived value and actual value didn't align. And underneath the business tension, there were covert contracts, unspoken deals, hidden expectations on both sides, mine and theirs. So these might have sounded like, I'll support you, pay you, protect your role, but don't move on. Don't move away. Don't leave me. And the other person's might have been, you'll pay me and my rate based on who I am, who I believe I am, not actually what I deliver. And I'll work when I feel like it. Neither of us said it. Both of us felt it. And it wasn't just about the work. It was about value systems. So I value love, loyalty, emotions, connections, and maybe they value income, money, control, guaranteed security. And that clash, it played out in the invoices, in the communication breakdowns, in expectations that were never spoken, but always assumed. So in this episode, I am unpacking it all. The emotional currency we trade, the unspoken rules we write for each other, and what happens when value is defined by ego instead of truth. Let's get straight into it. We're breaking up the business, the value, the ego, and the myth of being irreplaceable. So no one starts a business with their partner thinking about how it might end. Unless you're a Hollywood star and you're doing a prenup, nobody goes, this is what's going to happen when it's ends. You just go into it. You're dreaming, you're planning, you're pouring your heart into something that feels bigger than both of you. And saying things like, this is ours, we built this is our baby. But then the relationship ends and suddenly it's not ours anymore. It becomes, who owns what? Who contributed more? Who owes that? And what is each person really worth? in the business and outside of it. So in my early ventures, I tried to be smart. I had contracts, clauses, contingency plans for the what ifs. What if this falls apart and we go our separate ways? Clean contract. That was supposed to be the safety net. But love and business don't split cleanly, especially if you built a business on your brand. Because while I might not have built every part of the back end, I am the brand, the voice, the vision, and the reason people show up. So without me, the business might run, but it wouldn't breathe. And on the other side, there's the X. They hold the systems, the structures, the processes nobody else understands quite in the same way. They were part of the build too, and they feel it. And even when I've tried to replace them, sometimes I've circled back. Not because I couldn't move on. Well, I couldn't move on, let's be honest. But because no one else fit quite like they did. And maybe I didn't want to let go of what we've built. This is our baby. But eventually, every loop hits its limit. You know those toxic loops that you just keep going back and back and back? At some point, you've got to go, enough is enough. And a new chapter demands a new structure. And when businesses need to grow, it forces the hard questions. Who's actually essential? Who's adding real value? And who's just holding emotional real estate in a system that no longer works? Because this isn't just a business breakup. It's a story of value, about ego, about legacy, and about the myths we tell ourselves when we're afraid to let go. So let's talk about it. Because I've looked everywhere for this information and I haven't been able to find it. So if you're in a business with your partner and you're going through a breakup, this might be the podcast that you need to listen to, because I've had lots of businesses with partners, not just one. Every business I've built has been with a partner. Let's talk about that. What is perceived value versus contracted value? Perceived value is emotional. Contracted value is measurable. And the tension between the two, that's where the cracks begin to form. There's a belief someone holds about what they're worth, their history, their experience, their sense of importance in what was built together. They see themselves as essential, as irreplaceable, and maybe for a time they were. But perception doesn't always match reality. And now when it comes to what's being delivered, that's where contracted value steps in. A contract is clear. It's unemotional. It exists to protect clarity when everything else starts to blur. It says, here's what we agreed to. Here's what you signed. Here's what you're paid for. And here's what is expected in return. So that's why it's so important to have contracts in place when you're running a business with your partner, especially when you're running a business with your partner. I don't care how much you love them, get a contract in place, because that's going to determine how this ends up and whether this business continues to run or whether it crumbles. Because what happens when someone starts charging for who they believe they are, not for what they're actually done? So when the invoices start reflecting entitlement, not effort or execution, it becomes about emotional economics, not the business. And suddenly it's not about hours, outcomes, or delivery. It's about feelings, it's about ego, it's about unspoken debts that nobody agreed to pay. So I found myself in this stuck in this dynamic before, justifying costs that didn't make sense, paying to avoid conflict, honoring a history instead of standing in the present. But here's the truth. If perceived value keeps outweighing contracted value, Resentment doesn't just trickle in, it floods, because business doesn't run on sentiment, it runs on execution. It doesn't matter how valuable someone used to be. If they're not delivering what's needed now, if they're not aligned with where the business is heading, if they're no longer willing or able to evolve, and they can't have a good attitude when they're working, they can't build a future on memories, not even on the bad memories that they're holding. They have to build on momentum. And that doesn't mean I don't see talent. It doesn't mean I don't respect the contributions that are made. But value has to be active, not nostalgic. It has to show up in action, not just in stories. Because when emotional value eclipses actual delivery, it's not a partnership anymore. It's a power imbalance. And that's a line I won't cross again. What about the covert contracts? Yours and theirs, because everyone has these when you're going through a relationship sort of breakdown. A covert contract is an unspoken agreement. So it's something we assume, hope for, or expect without ever actually saying it out loud. So the other person doesn't know what your contract is. And I'm sure they've got one, you've got one, and you're both clashing with these covert contracts. So, and when these assumptions aren't met, you feel betrayed. But how can someone break a contract they never agreed to? So this plays out in ways I didn't fully see at the time, because I had covert contracts too. Mine sounded like, I'll support you, pay you, keep you involved, but don't move on. Don't disconnect. Don't leave me to do this alone. I never said those words, but I deeply felt them. I operated from them because I didn't want him to move on. I didn't want him to have a life without me. So that was my covert contract. And maybe his sounded like, you'll keep paying me for what I think I'm worth, regardless of the output, and I'll contribute when I feel like it because you'll always come back. And all I wanted was freedom. That's all I wanted in our relationship. And you're going to give it to me now and you're going to pay for it. So again, never said, but lived. And the problem with covert contracts is they feel like loyalty, they feel like fairness, they feel like love, because that person was in a relationship with you and they owe you something. But really, they're hidden negotiations built on insecurity and control. I thought if I supported him, he'd stay aligned. He thought if he withheld effort, I'd keep chasing. And we were both playing roles neither of us signed up for, because the rules were never clear to begin with. And it gets messier when personal and professional lives overlap because the contracts bleed. Support becomes obligation, gratitude becomes resentment, and payment becomes power. The whole thing becomes emotionally entangled until you can't tell if you're running a business or managing a breakup. A daily breakup. So no room for healing. You're just picking at that wound. It's like a festering, bleeding, open wound on a daily basis. Covert contracts are the silent saboteurs of value because you're not just trading money or time, you're trading expectations you didn't know you were holding. And the only way out is honesty. So here it is, laid out openly for anyone who's listening. Because maybe one day you'll find yourself in something that looks like this. Business mixed with emotion, contracts entangled with connection, and unspoken expectations slowly eroding away what once felt solid. And if you do, maybe hearing this will help you feel less crazy. Because answers, I've looked everywhere. Therapy, relationship coaching, attachment style deep dives, paid programs to get your ex back, podcasts, books, TikTok, trauma workshops, YouTube rabbit holes, you name it. I signed up for it. Paid, read, listened, and tried. And yes, I've learnt a lot, but nothing fully breaks down through the emotional loops and the lived triggers we've been stuck in. Because this isn't just about logic, it's about history, it's about patterns, it's about two people building something that no longer works and knowing how to let go of the parts that did. So that's the part no one teaches you. How to unravel a life you built with somebody who still exists in your orbit. How to set boundaries in a business you used to love. How to separate truth from trauma when every decision feels personal. So if you're here listening, thinking you're the only one feeling this, you're not. And if you're looking for a roadmap, sometimes the only way out is to speak the truth out loud. Even if your voice shakes, even if no one understands, because honesty won't fix everything, but it will set the foundation for whatever comes next. Let's jump into the value clash. So I come from trauma. So not that loud kind that makes the headlines. It can get loud though in arguments, but it's mainly a quiet kind that rewires your nervous system, sort of creates that, hypervigilance and that sort of thing, which can be a little bit overwhelming for an avoidant partner, and I tend to attract those. It's the kind that teaches you early on, be productive, be perfect, be prepared. That safety lives in control, and stillness means dangers. I've never been able to sit still. I'm one of those hyperactive, I need to be doing something at all times type of people. In the last 7 to 8 months, I've had a lot of therapy, and you know what? I can sit still. I don't have all the noise. So I've hit the jackpot, literally, over the last few months. But when it comes to the business, I built the rules, the invisible ones, the strong ones that kept me moving forward. They protected me from the chaos I came from. Rules like work first, don't show weakness, control everything so nothing falls apart. My boundaries weren't trendy affirmations. They were bricks in the wall that helped me survive. And then came someone who felt like the opposite, soft, open, present. He flowed where I was structured. He planned to, but for the relationship, I planned for the business. And if I'm honest, often prepared myself for betrayal, which says a lot in itself. He trusted easily where I stayed alert. He loved in ways that looked effortless, but his love didn't come with clear boundaries. He gave that love to everyone. So at first it felt like healing, like maybe I'd finally landed somewhere I could soften, somewhere I didn't have to carry everything alone. And maybe the structure I'd wrap myself in could stretch just a little bit. But when freedom meets structure, it doesn't always bend. Sometimes it just smashes in the middle. It collides. What started as love became a clash of value systems because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know how to fix this. We didn't have the tools. This was all unspoken, unexamined, and deeply ingrained in both of us. Mine was built for survival, and his was built for connection. And we kept trying to meet in the middle, but we weren't speaking the same emotional language. And every time I set a boundary, he felt rejected. And every time he leaned into freedom, I felt abandoned or unsafe. It wasn't that either of us was wrong. We were just living from two different emotional blueprints. And that clash didn't just frustrate me, it exposed me. It brought out every trigger I thought I'd dealt with. It was like a mirror looking at me, going, Lisa, you need to fix it. It brought up every fear I thought I'd outgrown, abandonment, failure, betrayal, and that familiar ache. Maybe if I just give a little bit more, they'll stay. I used to think that once you've done therapy, read enough books, done the work, you stop getting triggered. But that's not how it goes. Therapy is a constant thing, and triggers don't show up in safe spaces. They show up in real relationships, in business, in love, and all the places where our deepest patterns get activated. You can understand your trauma, name it, explain it, but until someone touches that live wire, you don't really know how deep it still runs. This pattern has shown up more than once in love, in work, and often they've been the same thing because I tend to build businesses with the people I love. And something I've done again with getting started in crypto.com. It feels so easy, aligned, like breathing the same idea and life together. It's intimate, like having a baby. You nurture it, grow it, until the lines between love and legacy blur. So that happened with my ex of 15 years. I built a business for him. I already had my own business, and he was working for someone else. And it just made sense for the hours he was working to work for himself and earn more. I poured everything into the foundation, believing that it was ours. And walking away from that wasn't just about letting go of the relationship. It was grieving part of myself I had invested so deeply into. And then came Coin Runners, which I've written a movie about. A different love, a different dynamic, born from creative fire and passion, but eventually unraveled by addiction. He went back to drugs, and I was left holding the weight of another dream that didn't make it to the finish line. Each time I thought I was building something lasting, but I was also trying to prove I was worthy of staying. That if I just created enough, gave enough, held it all together, maybe they wouldn't leave. But ironically, I left for different reasons. And when it ended up, I had to walk away from more than just love. I had to walk away from something I created. That grief is real. It doesn't just live in the heart, it lives in your work, your purpose, and your sense of self. Because you weren't just running a business, we were navigating covert contracts, unspoken deals like, if I'll keep building this for us, but please don't leave me. I'll support your vision if you keep choosing me. We never said those things, but we lived them. And when unspoken expectations aren't met, it doesn't just hurt. It destabilizes everything. Support turns into obligation. Gratitude becomes resentment. Love becomes leverage. And suddenly you're not building anymore. You're bargaining, not for money, for safety, for value, and for belonging. So it took me years to realize that we were using these different currencies. I always chased emotional intimacy, and the men chased financial security. I moved towards vision and momentum. They sought safety in the present. And we were both trying to get our needs met inside a system we built together, but never defined clearly. So what I've learned is this. It's not about who's right. It's about what's been coded into you since the beginning. The trauma, the survival patterns, the rules that you keep alive. You can't love someone into structure, and you can't force someone into letting go of control. But you can do this. You can recognize when your foundations are shaking, not because you're broken, but because you're being asked to meet someone where they've never felt safe. And from that place, you get to choose. Do I bend? Do I hold? Do I rebuild? Or do I let go? For the answer, that's been all of the above at different times. Some walls needed to come down. Some boundaries needed to be rebuilt. Some boundaries needed to be solid. And a lot of grief had to be felt for the version of me that truly believed love and business could always coexist cleanly. If you're listening to this, thinking of your own relationship, your own patterns, and your own rules that keep you safe, let this be a reminder. You're allowed to be structured. You're allowed to be soft. You're allowed to crave connection and demand consistency. And when values clash, it's not always a red flag. Sometimes it's a mirror, a chance to ask, What still feels unresolved? What still hurts when it's touched? And what are the covert contracts I'm still living by? Because value systems don't always match, but they always reveal what we believe will keep us safe. And when you see that clearly, that's where the real healing begins. Let's get into the Scarface analogy. This is one of my favorite movie scenes of all time. But value as control versus connection, and that's kind of what we're looking at here. So let's talk about value as power and the different ways people try to protect themselves in it. For some, value is rooted in connection, in being chosen, in being close, in feeling emotionally significant to somebody else. For others, value is about control, controlling their environment, controlling money, controlling outcomes, because control feels like safety when the world has felt unsafe. And this is where emotional currency starts to split. One person is trying to earn love, and the other person is trying to secure leverage. It's a Scarface model. First you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the respect. It's transactional, strategic, and safe. Because if you can control the money, you don't have to be vulnerable. You don't have to ask for love. You just position yourself in a way where people need you. So you never have to risk needing them. That's a survival story for so many people who chase financial dominance. If I have the money, I can't be abandoned. If I'm valuable enough on paper, I don't have to earn emotional closeness. If I'm needed, I can't be left. Money becomes armor, work becomes worth, control becomes loving disguise. But what happens when this mindset enters a relationship? You get power plays instead of vulnerability. You get withheld effort until demands are met. And you get people treating invoices like intimacy, using money to prove importance rather than building trust through presence. Meanwhile, someone else, maybe like me, is sitting on the other end of that equation, still seeking value and connection, in loyalty, in shared vision, in emotional equity. I wasn't looking to dominate. I wasn't trying to hold power. I was trying to create something together, something special, something amazing, something we breathed life and energy into. But what I didn't realize was that we were speaking completely different love language. Mine was collaboration, theirs was control. So when I challenged something, a rate, a decision, a standard, it wasn't seen as a negotiation. It was seen as a threat to control. And when love meets control, only one of them can exist in the room at a time, because control kills vulnerability. And vulnerability is the lifeblood of real connection. And that's what I've had to learn the hard way, that when someone sees value as control, your emotional honesty won't feel safe to them. It feels like chaos. It feels like something's missing. And they'll try to regain their footing the only way they know how, with distance, with dollars, and with dominance. But that's not real value. That's fear, and that's ego wearing a spreadsheet. And I'm done assigning worth to people who measure their importance by how much they're owed instead of how much they show up. Because value isn't control. And it's not leverage, it's alignment, it's consistency, and it's presence. And if the only way someone can feel powerful is by holding the keys to the kingdom, then they were never building the kingdom with you. They were building a vault for themselves. Let's reclaim your definition of value. After everything I've unpacked, the blurred lines, the emotional contracts, the covert contracts, the love, money dynamics, the power plays disguised as partnership, I've come to this. Value isn't something someone else hands you. It's something you define for yourself. And more importantly, it's something you protect. For a long time, I thought value was tied up to how much I could give, how much I could hold, and how much I could love, forgive, pay, absorb, and explain. I thought being understanding made me strong, that being the one who sees the bigger picture made me wise. And in some ways it did, but it also kept me stuck in patterns and loops, because when your value system is rooted in compassion without boundaries, you don't feel respected. You feel depleted. You feel used. And I got tired of feeling like I had to justify my standards, tired of walking on eggshells to avoid wounding someone else's ego, tired of paying invoices and emotional debt for someone else's lack of clarity, consistency, or accountability. Here's what value means to me now. So value is clarity. It's knowing what I bring to the table without shrinking. It's being the face, the fire, the force behind everything I build, and refusing to entertain dynamics that make me question that. Value is consistency, not potential, not charm, not emotional cycles, but showing up, doing the work, saying the truth, and holding the line. Value is alignment. If the energy doesn't match, the effort won't either. And value is peace. Not walking away from a challenge, but walking away from chaos, from confusion, from contracts I never signed but kept honoring anyway. I've spent too much time managing other people's projections, their expectations, their watered down definitions of what I'm worth. No more. Because I know exactly what I bring. I bring vision, strategy, and execution. I bring brands that didn't exist before I breathed life into them. I bring global reach, loyal communities, products that convert, and ideas that move markets. Entire ecosystems from scratch. Platforms, teams, systems, and stories that matter. I've had help, of course, but I did it without waiting for permission. From here on out, if someone wants to stand beside me in love, in business, in life, they need to come with some clarity. They need the same energy, the same respect. Because I'm not here to convince anyone of my value. I live it every day in what I create, how I lead, in what I walk away from when it no longer aligns. My value is not up for negotiation. It's already been proven by what I've built on my own and what I've built together with others. If anything in this episode hit close to home, let it sit. Let it stir. Let it shake something loose. Because reclaiming your value isn't in a moment. It's a decision. One I'm finally living by. And if you're building a business with your partner, get the contracts in place. Seriously. No one gets into love thinking about the end. We all believe in the fairy tales in Disneyland, but the reality, around 1 in 2 relationships don't make it. That's 50%. 1 in 2 relationships don't make it now. Have a contract and know how it ends before it ends. And when that time comes, which I hope it doesn't for you, but if you're listening to this, maybe it has. Stand by the contract. It's there for a reason. And if you love this episode, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. And if you want more, all of my links are below. Come and say hi on social media. I'm always building something. Thanks for being here and listening to Uncharted. I'll catch you next week.
I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto 54 amber eyes. I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto 54 amber eyes. Uncharted. Let's go.